Oh, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone who's currently in this live chat right now, 27 of you are terrified, as are we. The Eagles, the Bengals, both teams are 0-2, and maybe it's a sign, because right now my retinas are being burned out by the sun. Is it a shining light, a ray of hope at the end of the tunnel? I don't know. We're going to try and find out in today's pre-game show. With me to break down the action, we've got two of our finest Eagles contributors, one half of Flipping the Birds, Chris Infante, and the sole host of Birds in Focus, and Mr. Does Everything Ever at ESPN, Nick Farrier. How are you doing, boys?
I'm doing. Nervous. It's an 0. I haven't felt an 0-2 feeling in 5 years, so it's kind of strange, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I mean, there's been a lot of concern, obviously, coming off of what we saw in not only game 1, but game 2. Like, in my opinion, game 2 was more concerning than game 1 for a totally different array of reasons. Like, game 1, you had the defense looking sound. There was such a flurry of confidence around guys like Avonte Maddox. Even the linebackers looked mildly tolerable. And then game 2, that all disappears. The same issues happen with Carson Wentz, but the offensive line's magically fixed. Then now in week 3, we've got our own stuff to worry about. We've got no Jalen Reagor, for instance, which is a kind of minor setback. You've got a little bit of worry about, is there a front office disconnect? You've got the coaching staff having their own quibbles, with Jim Schwartz being very accountable, Doug Peterson being the very opposite of that word in this week's media breakdowns. So we're going to get into a lot today, from favourable matchups to fantasy to other games on the slate, and a little bit of everything in between. Nick, I'll come to you first, because I think you gave the most, anxious response about this game. As it's get closer, as we're now under an hour away from kickoff, what is your primary thought train right now? Is it a concern? Is it hope? Like, where are you thinking?
There is tremendous amount of concern, at least on my end, for a couple of reasons. First off, at an 0-2 start, we've seen this happen, I think, 3 times in the last 2 decades. So there's obviously concern there. The last time they even made the playoffs when they were 0-2 was 2003. And there are some similarities to that team, the 2003 Eagles, to the 2020 Eagles. You have a franchise quarterback on a long-term deal, battling some injuries, and you also have issues along the offensive and defensive side of the football. But probably the one biggest area of concern is where it comes to coaching. Because as bad as Zach Taylor has looked over the last year and a month of him being the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, he's part of that Sean McVay tree. And when you think of Sean McVay, you only have to look back to last week when the Eagles gave up however godly amount of yards rushing the football. Jared Goff at one point was 14 of 14 passing, kept going outside the pocket. I get that Joe Burrow is a different quarterback than Jared Goff, but Taylor is of that same mold of, we want to get the quarterback outside the pocket, we want to get him moving, we want to get the defensive line moving, and cause a lot of confusion. So there is a ton to worry about just because of Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I think that head coach himself, obviously being the older brother of Press Taylor, who hasn't exactly been the most renowned coach in Philadelphia in recent years, it's an intriguing matchup for a variety of reasons. That's definitely one of the big areas. Before we come to Chris, who I know has got a lot to say, big shout out to everyone in the chat. Lewis Knox says Carson needs to figure it out this week against the worst defense in the league. Wentz my king. Geordie says hello. Connie says hello. Hello to 2 of our biggest fans. Justin's in here as well, who is a super PSN stan, who says, hey, wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. Jasper says the season's exhausting. I know there's a little bit of an audio issue here. It's to do with the MacBook, unfortunately. I'm trying to get it fixed as soon as we can, boys. Let's just go then to Chris. I mean, you've broken this matchup down already. You were lucky enough to bring on someone from the jungle. I was going to make a Guns N' Roses joke then I couldn't because I worded it wrong. But on Flipping the Birds, how are you feeling after that conversation? Did it give you more hope or less hope after talking to someone who covers the Bengals?
I guess you could say we were welcomed to the jungle.
Okay, we'll go with that one. That works.
That was good. So, talking to John didn't really make anything much more, easy for me because they still have the one and only Liam Jenkins under center. They have a guy who threw it 60 times last week.
Yeah.
61 times, the most ever for a rookie quarterback in a game. Ever. 61 times. And he completed 37 of them. So he wasn't that bad throwing it 61 times. And you still had Joe Mixon rush for 80-something yards against the Browns. It was a high-flying game, 30 to 35. So you could see right off the bat that quarterback brings a whole new element of offense to that Bengals. They might still be really bad up front in the offensive line. They may still be really bad in the secondary. But Joe Burrow looked like he could make some things happen. And we saw the emergence of Drew Sample, and we saw Tyler Higbee go off last week. And we saw Logan Thomas go off against us 2 weeks ago. So just seeing Drew Sample give us a small sample size of, see what I did there, of what he can do. It's like I'm nervous about the Bengals offense versus our linebackers. Corners, T. Higgins, the enigma of Eagles Twitter coming up to draft. Do we want T. Higgins? Do we not want T. Higgins? Because is he a speed receiver or is he just another Alshon Jeffrey? He's been showing that he's pretty good for the Bengals right now. I got AJ Green, who's always AJ Green. So it's from a defensive standpoint, I'm still very nervous after talking to him. Offensively, I think this could be the game that Carson Wentz actually does something right this year. But I coming into this year, I figured this was going to be a trap game. I figured the Eagles would be 2-0 coming into this game, but this just reminds me of Miami last year. It's too much.
I don't know, and I know before we get into that a little bit more, I think we have to address the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside situation. I know a lot of you guys are looking for information on that. I don't know why John Clark tweeted that, to be honest. He's like, oh my god, he's talking to Howie Roseman, something's wrong, he might not. It's like, no, if he wasn't active, he'd be talking to Doug Peterson, not the GM. Like, that's sort of like not, it's like me working for Apple, going, I'm not going into work today, and just phoning Tim Cook and being like, Tim, listen, mate, I've got a cold, I'm not coming in, alright, sorry, I'll see you later. That, I don't know what it was. JJ's active, he's going to play, everything's going to be fine. I say fine for now. What that conversation was about is as good as anyone's guess, really, but, I mean, it could be trade speculation. I highly doubt Roseman's that emotionally insensitive to go 2 minutes before, arguably, JJ's biggest game of his career, to go in and go, JJ, buddy, you're a Dolphin next week, so see you later. Like, that's not happening either.
Imagine a Dolphins wide receiver core with JJ Arcega-Whiteside and Matt Collins. Whew, that would be...
Oh, God, just the dream.
Imagine the routes being run in Miami.
It goes back, though, to, like, the real... And we talk about this, and we've talked about this a couple times over the last 2 weeks. We can blame, and rightfully so, we can blame Carson Wentz's poor play in the first 2 weeks because he has not played well. We can blame the inconsistencies on defense and the inconsistencies on the offensive line. One game they're great, the other game, the first week of the season they were atrocious. All these inconsistencies, Doug Peterson coaching a very vanilla offense. The real culprit, if we are to sit back and say, why are they 0-2, it has nothing to do with the people on the field. It has everything to do with the roster reconstruction of Howie Roseman. I mean, we're talking about Howie Roseman standing there talking to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on the sidelines. Why is the GM on the field before kickoff? Why are we looking at it where the GM, who's had all the power to create this roster and create a Super Bowl winning team, has everyone over the age of 30? This roster is still extremely old. He went into the offseason noticing that they needed speed and said, okay, we're going to sign a couple of guys over the age of 30 that are quick. There's so many issues on this roster outside of just Carson Wentz's poor play, and it centers completely around Howie Roseman. And this is no different. A GM talking to a receiver in the middle of warm-ups or to try and talk to him, and then he runs out. Why would a GM be put in that position? Why would a GM put a player in that position to even be seen like that?
Yeah, definitely not his finest moment for sure. Just looking through what some of the guys have said in the chat. Welcome to Morgan, to JJ. Brandon's in. He says Sudfeld must have a record for inactive days. Who should replace Nate? Gary? At this point, I'd put Nick or Chris in there. I think either of them would do a better job. The linebacker corps scares me, but I want to talk. We're talking matchups now, I guess. The one thing I think the Eagles have to do today is run the ball, and it is just pound it. And I think like we have this conversation for the first 3 weeks of every season. It's like the same way the Saints stink in week 1 and 2, heat up week 3, and then their season kicks on. Like Doug Peterson doesn't run the ball, or there's inherent issues with running backs for the first few weeks, then they figure it out. This has to be a big running game. Like we said, the Bengals got gashed last week. They've given up 370 rushing yards in 2 weeks. Miles Sanders exploded in his return after he got the fumble out the way. That in itself confused me. Why you gave it to him like 4 times in a row, having had no action in about a month, is a little bit going 0 to 100. But I think if you're going to run, if you can get Miles Sanders an open space, if you can just get a release valve, get a solid 8-9 play drive where you're into the 30-yard line, then let Wentz just start taking checkdowns. Keep as much pressure off of him as possible. They're depleted at defensive tackle, the Bengals. They're giving up a lot of leverage against the run. This doesn't need to be a Carson Wentz masterclass, so let's not make it have to be one. That's my aim for this game. Get Miles Sanders in that end zone as soon as possible and just let him do the dirty work today.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And if you're looking at a comparison from last year, Chris mentioned before how this game could very well be similar to the Miami Dolphins game, where the Eagles are favored and they're supposed to win. I could also put 2 cents in and say this is like the Green Bay Packers game, where the Eagles were reeling at 1 and 2. They just lost a very winnable game to Detroit, and Detroit was not a good team that last year. And they go out against Green Bay, a very good Green Bay Packer team, and they rush for over 150 yards as an overall unit. Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard absolutely bulldozed their way over the Packers' defensive line and basically said to Carson, okay, you are the point guard. Hand off right, hand off left, read the defense, figure out which hole to run. The Bengals don't have Geno Atkins. They don't have Mike Daniels in this game. That is the match. If they don't...
Mike Daniels, sorry to interrupt you there, but Mike Daniels is active today.
Is he?
Okay, so based on what they were talking about yesterday, it seemed he was going to be inactive. So if he's active, that changes a little bit, but not too much. Because the goal is to still run the football. If Geno Atkins isn't playing, you run the football down the throat of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Chris, I know you are one of Miles Sanders' biggest advocates, I think yourself and Brian, obviously. Where do you stand on this? Does this have to be one of the big Miles Sanders games, do you think?
Yes, on both sides, on both rushing and receiving. When we were talking to John on Tuesday, one thing, I asked him how great is Akeem Davis-Gaither and Logan Wilson doing. And I mentioned Akeem because he was a guest of Flipping the Birds back in March. And, he said they're doing well, but, they're rookies, so they're still adjusting to it. So to get Miles Sanders in open space, whether running the ball over and over and over, or flexing him out to the slot or halfback wheeling him out, he has to get matchups on linebackers because these linebackers won't be able to keep up with him. No matter Akeem Davis-Gaither and Logan Wilson are very quick for the position, but Miles Sanders needs to have a total of 25 to 30 touches today. Either 20 rushes, 5 catches or so. He needs to be the focal point. If Carson Wentz wants to get back on track, he needs to trust in his best player. And Miles Sanders is the Eagles' best player right now. I don't care about Zach Ertz. I don't care about Carson Wentz or anybody. Miles Sanders is the Eagles' best player right now, and they need to get him going.
Yeah, interesting that. So JJ says, Jason Lackenfora says NFL execs see Josh McCown as a future head coach. Thoughts on it? When Jason Lackenfora says anything, assume the opposite. We've learnt that much. But B, I think a lot of people do see Josh McCown as a head coach or a future positional coach, to say the least. Knowing that he's been working at a high school level, that I think a lot of people expected he'd come in to the Eagles organization and do that this season. Why he was brought on as a quarterback on a practice squad, I don't know. Maybe it's just a way to get him in the building. And I think Carson Wentz could probably use that veteran in his ear. And I think I'm not being critical. I think I have been critical of Carson Wentz enough this week. I've been very heavy on him, his fundamentals and his mechanics. And I think a lot of the week 1 and 2 problems fall on his shoulders and the fundamentals. And it's not that The offensive line let him down in week 2, and there were people making arguments that, it's because he's scared of being hit. And I'm like, have you ever watched Andrew Luck play a football game? Did you watch Carson Wentz in 2016? He's not got the jitters because he got hit by, Chase Young a week ago. It doesn't work like that at that level for that long. So I don't know. I think that's a multi-stranded, path that we've gone down now. Connie says, 3 questions. Will Hightower play? Who do you think will break out, and who needs to break out? I'll toss it to Chris, who's very proudly slapping his chest. Now, Chris is either saying he's going to break out, or it's the man to do with the jersey.
Break out probably hides if the Eagles lose again. That's the only thing I'm going to break out in. But if for some of you that don't know the jersey I'm wearing Greg Ward's college jersey. There you go. See, Greg Ward Jr. My wife said, "Who cares?" she's very excited about the game because she thinks we suck. So, but she did make me a mean Bloody Mary with jalapeno salt. Anyways, I think this is the day that we see Greg Ward shine a little bit more because he's not to say that he was overshadowed by everything else going on because he was a starter and he was getting some snaps. But now there's no Jalen Rager. We see that again where there's no Alshon Jeffrey. Who knows how many snaps John Hightower's going to get? Quez Watkins is still on IR. He'll probably be back next week. Who knows? JJ is probably going to get some snaps here, and targets in the red zone. However Doug wants to say that the play was designed for them or not. I think this has to be, when I say Miles Sanders' game, it also has to be Greg Ward's too, because Greg Ward, towards the end of the season last year, really opened up the short to mid-range game. And that's what's been lacking in Carson's game the last couple weeks. He's either been, let's swing it deep and hope for the best, or let's hit it down low and see what happens from there. He has no mid-range game right now besides the tight ends.
It's not even that. It's the fact that you, even on screens and checkdowns to Miles Sanders, the placement of the ball isn't there. It's not even that he's making the right decisions. The decisions, there's a great video, I think it was Seth Galina by PFF, who is a god of football knowledge, who just showed it much better than I ever could. But he's making the right decisions with the ball in his hands, as in the right throws to make, reading coverages, leading safeties down. The problem is the throws themselves, and it's the best example was Dallas Goedert when he had that step last week, and the ball ended up behind the DB, and you just saw Goddard's arm sneak out the bottom. It's been really, really bad, really, really bad, and I know Nick is itching to get in on that.
When it comes to Carson Wentz, my biggest comparison, and I think everyone's biggest comparison to him, was Ben Roethlisberger. The big body, big arm, can escape pressure and all these different stuff. You look at sometimes in the game, he's going to give you 5 plays of, oh my God, how did he do that? But then he's also going to make throws that you're sitting there saying, how did you not complete this? And you look at Ben Roethlisberger now. Ben Roethlisberger is 37, 38 years old, and the dude is still missing passes. The difference is, and I think this is where it comes down, the major points it comes down to. Ben Roethlisberger is in an offense that is tailor-made for his skill set. You get him out, 3-step drop, it's a quick pass. 3-step drop, quick pass. Or they're rolling him out and they're allowing him to make the plays and make that read himself. Carson, and granted, you can talk about the groin, you can talk about, the fact that the coaching staff hasn't fit the scheme. We're looking at Carson Wentz as one of the best quarterbacks rolling outside the pocket, and they, whether it's coaching or whether it's him, have just not done that. And it's very perplexing to me when you have a quarterback with a specific skill set and you say, no, we're going to try and make you into a pocket passer. It doesn't make sense to me.
What boggles my mind is, and I hate to bring this name up, but because it's been a bone spur, for all of us. It's Nick Foles, and when Nick Foles was the quarterback, I feel like there was more tailor-made offense for Nick Foles that should be tailor-made for Carson Wentz, and that's gone now because there were so many RPOs, and if Wentz gets into those RPOs, that brings him out of the pocket so much more, and he's able to do so much more. But now, what Foles should have been doing, which was more of a pocket passer, because he can't really move that well outside of his Philly specialty. There was a reverse. Let's get Wentz into these RPOs. Make him he has shown time after time that he can do, and he's adept at it. But now it's just like, you know what, Carson, stay in the pocket and just let the pocket collapse on you, and that's it.
Completely agree with you, Chris. Because here's the thing. People forget, as good as that 2017 run was, the Eagles for the last 3 games of the season were atrocious. I mean, atrocious.
People were calling for they suck out.
Nick Foles was horrendous in those 3 games. And what happened? They changed their offensive scheme to fit Nick Foles' skill set, and then Nick Foles goes on 2 unbelievable runs. They win the Super Bowl. Before he got hurt, the offense was tailor-made for Carson Wentz's skill set, and he was playing like an MVP. In 2018 to now, for some godforsaken reason, they have said, we know that we've tailor-made this offense to Carson Wentz, but because Nick Foles also produced, we want Carson to be like Nick Foles. And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, you know, I've been very hard on Carson Wentz all week. I think from a game plan perspective, it just got to be more balanced. And I mean, my argument for anyone that's listened to the Outside Insider, if you haven't, you can listen to that. You can listen to Flipping the Bird. You can listen to Nick's new podcast that I'm sure will be cooking up very, very soon. PSN Radio, all good podcasting platforms down the bottom. Make sure you hit follow. We've literally got podcasts every single day of the week. All right, we're just spamming you with as much good Eagles content as we can. But I said in the podcast that the Eagles around, you know, they've gone and made all these moves, like Nick said, right? So they go out and they bring in a lot of speed, and they want everything to do with speed, and they bring in 3 wide receivers through the draft, and you're like, okay, well, this is it now. They can run wide receiver formations with Jackson and Rager, and then they run 12 personnel 80% of the time, and then your tight ends are being targeted way more than all the other receivers combined, and then you end up going, well, now they're not paying Zach Ertz, but they're living fundamentally out of 12 personnel. And it's like the front office want the speed, and the coaching staff are going, nope, our bread and butter's tight ends. And then there feels like a discrepancy. That's a different debate, I know, but something very worth noting when talking about the shape of this offense, because I really don't get why. And Eric has a great point as well. Oh, also, Eric, really sorry, like I can't get Slack open on my Mac right now because it's on fire. And I can't copy the code in to add you to the call, but we will get it sorted, mate, for next time. But he says, when will Kayvon get his shot? Again, another example of a front office, a coaching staff disconnect. Why is Marcus Epps playing? Why is Nate Gary playing? Why the offensive line decisions? Rudy's a lovely man because you can go, Rudy!
We're not here for your songs, Leo.
Why?
Do you see there's a connection here?
Go on.
Between the players that you make songs for,
yeah,
and the players who either suck or get cut.
Yeah, remember?
Okay, but
before and then
right,
drops a 20-yard pass.
Okay, but
and do we need to bring up Clayton Thorson?
Da 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 da. Clayton Thorson. That had to be done. I haven't got the video anymore. I have to download it from some dodgy website now. I heard it's on adult websites now. People, you know, get off to it. It's that good. But it's I don't know. It's intriguing, this game. We're now 35 minutes away. Let's talk fantasy for a bit then. Let's change it up, because otherwise we're just going to rant and get angry and then go into this game crying. The PSN Fantasy League is very, very interesting. Chris, what Eagles players have you got in yours? Who are you playing today? Who are your starts and sits from people on the Eagles?
Well, I've been battling back and forth. I only have one Eagles player on my team, which is very unlike me. I usually have 2 or 3. I did have Boston Scott first week of the season, and then I dropped him. I have Wentz. I have the man under center. I'm not playing him today. I'm playing Tannehill over him. Ryan Tannehill's facing a Minnesota secondary that's not very good, and Wentz is facing a Bengals secondary that's not very good either. But who knows if he can hit the deep ball today? So and Tannehill's been very good the last few starts, however many starts he's been from the Titans. So I think for me and for everybody else, Carson Wentz should be in wait and see mode if you're going to start him or not. But then you're looking at the next few weeks. He faces the 49ers next week, which even without Richard Sherman, their defense is still really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. Then he faces the Steelers, whose defense is really, really, really good. And then he faces the Ravens, whose defense is really, really, really good. So this might be a 4-week stretch of where if you have another quarterback other than Carson Wentz, that's probably the quarterback that you're starting over him. starting today.
Yeah, it's a tough, and I think that goes back to, without getting too much back off fantasy, but it does go back to why this game in particular is so important. Because if they don't win this, and you go through those next three, arguably the divisional games, I mean, yes, the Giants don't have Saquon, but the Giants always seem to be that thorn in the side that will always play the Eagles way closer than they deserve to be because it's the Giants.
There's been time after time. I know the Eagles have beaten the Giants like 6 times in a row, 7 times in a row. But like out of 5 of those times, the Giants were probably up like 20-7.
Yeah.
Or something of that sort during the game, and the Eagles had to come back to win. So the Giants could be due for something, even without Saquon. They do have former kind of Eagle
former flirt. They had a summer fling, just didn't work.
So let's say this. If you're looking for a fantasy starter, and this actually came up in the last couple of hours, Julio Jones isn't playing.
He's not Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, and I would say, look, Calvin Ridley, with the start that he's had, you're going to want to start him. I would also say tread carefully with him, only because him now being the focal point of the Falcons' offense, it could cause problems against the Bears' defense. I get the Bears' secondary isn't the reason why they're so elite, but that's still a very good secondary, and you're probably going to see a lot of doubles from Calvin Ridley today. The other name that I do want to bring up that is in regards to Philadelphia is Zach Ertz, because
I got him.
He has been non-existent over the first 2 weeks. He hasn't really done much of anything over the first 2 weeks, and I think on the end of the post game in week 1, I thought Zach Ertz quit after the second quarter. He just wasn't ready to play.
The thing was on that with that game was that the Eagles were very, very clever with the way they used that, and they've changed it a lot. Where he's now almost used as his decoy, where he knows he's got the tougher matchup with safeties. So if they can almost force him vertical, it just leaves a wide open spot underneath for Goddard, who's way more dangerous than Ertz in open space for yards after the catch, right? So if you can get Goddard in those soft zone spaces where he can just turn and go, we know Zach Ertz has problems turning and running forward. Let's not throw back to the game that shall not be mentioned. But it just makes sense. So I totally get what you're saying. I'm not going to talk much about fantasy because I made the mistake in the PSN Fantasy League of drafting 4 tight ends. And Nick already gave me a lot of stick for that last night. But Zach Ertz is one of them.
You only have 3 tight ends.
Not enough.
I have 4.
Oh, you still have 4.
I still have 4. I did go to cut one, and I decided, nope, tight end factory. If the Eagles are a QB factory, we're a tight end factory. All right, and on that note, guys.
Scrubs at tight end. You have Ingram, Ertz, Herndon, who's okay, and Ebron.
Yeah.
You have
I thought.
Demand in fantasy football. What team, if you're the owner of your team and Liam goes up to you and says, I want a running back for a tight end, would you make that trade? No. Because a running back, even a third-string running back, is more valuable than, Evan Ingram of the New York Giants.
Firstly, I'm offended. And secondly, I mean, I did suggest a trade with Zach wanted Jerry Jeudy off of me, suggested a trade, and I said no and offered him 2 tight ends, which he didn't need, and he declined it. And now I have no wide receivers and an injured Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy, he's very questionable. He's going to play today, but he's going to be very limited, so it's KJ Hamler season for the Broncos, and I have him in my team too. So
there we go.
Things are looking up for Princess Hilaire.
But I do just want to say, guys, we've got 53 of you watching right now. A massive thank you to everyone that is tuning in. Drop your questions in the chat. Let's get some fan interaction. Let's see what's on your mind. Let's have a bit of group therapy. If you haven't liked the video, let's pump it up, right? There's 51 of you. Let's get this to, I reckon we get it to 30 before game time. I reckon we can push that all the way up and see what we can do. I'm the Chicago Bears of fantasy football. Probably. I'm very, very bad. Nat Daddy says the mic quality is horrid bad. Yeah, unfortunately, MacBooks don't like Skype recording on OBS. So I'll be moving over to my big computer, but had to make this at home on my MacBook that is currently on fire. Very much like the Eagles offense, okay? We'd all love it to be a lovely functioning computer, but sometimes the MacBook just is on fire and you have to make do with what you've got. So hopefully that changes today. But before we get to it, while we wait for some of the questions to come in then, let's just talk about the landscape of some of the other games in the league. Like, obviously, the NFC East is quite the spotlight this weekend. I mean, you've got Dallas and Seattle, which I think, for me, could be one of the most entertaining games of the entire weekend. Like, looking at what Dallas did last week, looking at the season Russell Wilson is having, like, I think he's got an MVP candidacy there already. Seeing that both of those guys come together, like, I'm excited. That's going to be fun.
I completely agree with you. First off, let's talk about just this entire week of great matchups. Sunday Night Football is Green Bay in New Orleans, which is going to be incredible. And then on Monday night, you've got the gauntlet of all gauntlet matchups where Mahomes takes on Lamar Jackson. Week 3 has a number of great matchups. The Raiders against the Patriots. The Raiders looking for a 3-0 start. They've been great. Los Angeles and Buffalo. The Rams against the Bills. That's going to be another great matchup as well. But if you're looking at it from the NFC East perspective, and I said this last week to a couple of my friends who were sitting with me, if you watch Dallas's comeback against Atlanta, and I hate to say this, but it reminded me so much of Jake Elliott's kick over against the Giants' 61-yard field goal, where it could propel the team to new heights and get them to a position to be Super Bowl contenders. That is a terrifying thought to me, but that was the first thing that came up. This miraculous comeback that happened that should not have even been a thing last week against Atlanta, but Dallas sitting at 1-1 now. Going into Seattle, I like the matchup better for Dallas than I do against Seattle, mostly because of Dallas's weapons that I think could easily go on a deep playoff run if they get hot. And my worry is that they're about to.
I think the Cowboys are missing Jadobi, whatever, I can't remember.
The cornerback that I had a massive crush on, Awuzie.
I think they're missing him, so that's
I miss him.
Liam, we're talking about your man crushes.
Another day.
I think without him, or even eliminated him, that defense is it's already reeling. I mean, Sean Lee, who knows when they had a healthy Sean Lee. Sean Lee's out, LVE's out. The defensive line isn't doing too great this year. Their secondary, and that's why there's a reason why people have been clamoring for Earl Thomas, because their safety play is and their corner play is So, I mean, you saw the Falcons light them up last week until they didn't. And I think Russell Wilson can have for as great as Russell Wilson's been in his 8 years in the league, I think today can very well be a career day for Russell Wilson against his Cowboys defense. It could be a shootout. It could be a 40-40 game, but I think Russell Wilson is in for a really, really, really good game against his Cowboys. Or so I hope. Yeah,
I just want to approach, so let's get on some fan questions really quickly because they're coming in thick and fast. Mott Bellamy, and if that is the name of Matt Bellamy... Huh?
That's what she said.
Gotcha. I was like, if that's a pun of Matt Bellamy as in the Muse singer, I rate that, and I'm a massive fan, so fair play. If it's not, and your name's Mott Bellamy, then fair enough. But if it's a good pun, I'm here for it. He says, why doesn't major media cover Carson's mechanics? I spent my whole week on their YouTube channel, and either Fran Duffy or Dave brought it up. One, you're on the wrong YouTube channel, because I spent bloody 6 hours making a film room that it goes through everything, all right? But two, the Eagles media team's great, all right? Fran's incredible, Dave's incredible. But at the end of the day, they're going to act in the best interest of the team, and they're not going to put content out that says Carson Wentz is playing dreadfully, because that's very detrimental to their image. Like, they're PR guys at the end of the day, right? They've got a clear bias towards the Eagles because they work for the Eagles, so they're not going to get into that. They will talk great things, and most of Fran's film stuff is always positive film stuff. It's always good stuff the team's done. Sometimes it's negative as well, and it's very reasoned, but yeah, that will be why, just because they're not going to throw them under the bus.
Hey, Liam, not to make you a little more paranoid than you usually are about things, but you know how Nick just ran down today's games?
Yeah.
I'm looking at today's slate on YouTube, and we're not seeing New Orleans Green Bay on that today's slate.
No, because technically in England they don't play today; they play tomorrow. So
we're not on England time.
Oh my god! I've just realised Mott Bellamy was actually a Muse pun. What a legend! That's actually made my day. Respect that so much. Let's have a look at a couple other questions. I think my favourite one that I've seen that's going to trigger every single one of us, and I think we'll start with Nick, was what are your thoughts on how Nate Gary will do today? And that's from Jasper Tyner.
I would compare Nate Gary discuss it because I feel like you have to, if you want to complain about mispronunciations of your last name, then how about you make a tackle? That's just number one. Number two, if I personally feel, and this is just my thought, if we went out there and had a practice dummy, one of those pads where the defensive line pushes and drives, if we had one of those standing in the middle of the field being our linebacker, I think it would be far more productive because at least that zone, that one spot, that one stationary zone would be covered. Because I personally feel that Nate Jerry should not be on a football team. I think TJ Edwards should be starting. I feel that Nigel Bradham should be re-signed or just trade for someone because I am sick and tired of seeing Jerry running over the sideline to sideline, wondering where the ball is, and the ball's on the other side of the field. I'm so sick of him playing and just being an awful, awful play.
Okay, Chris, anything you want to add to that? Imagine a cake, okay? Nick has given us a very good base. All right, now you're going to put the icing on, and I'll try and find a lovely little cherry before it goes in the window. So what have you got there? What icing are we looking at? What sprinkles have you got?
You'd be hard to find.
Oh no.
Someone who has more Teflon-like arms than Nate Gary.
Have you seen mine?
No, I am very, very confidently that you could make a tackle before Nate Gary can take a tackle. Like I think if Derrick Henry was running full speed at you and Nate Gary, you would cause him to trip up before Nate Gary would.
Let's just look at what we're talking about here. And for context, here is a tube of Barocca. Yeah.
This is a family channel.
Didn't want to get. Sorry for getting you boys flustered. That wasn't my intention.
It might be 7:40 over there or whatever, or 6:40, but it's 12:40 here. It's still too early. But I think Nate, I don't know. I really don't understand Jim Schwartz's fascination with safeties converting to linebackers. I get it's worked kind of, and we have someone who has experience with that, Mark Manuel, with Keanu Neal. Coming down, but with Keanu Neal the other day. But Nate Gary's not Keanu Neal. Like Nate Gary's
Simmons. Simmons.
Like Nate Gary is not even Mark Barron. Like Mark Barron's another one who comes down at we see Landon Collins do that a lot, and we see Mark Barron, and we see Isaiah Simmons. Like Isaiah Simmons does everything, but he does everything really great. But Nate Gary right now, like he's not even close to being not great. In 2 games right now, he's been targeted 6 times, and he's allowed 6 passes to be completed for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's given up a 149.3 rating. It's very, very close to a perfect passer rating. Get Nate Gary off the
way,
family. Right.
My thought process with how they do the linebackers is I understand the idea of converting safeties to linebackers, especially in this day and age where offenses are so spread out. The college game has come into the NFL. Completely get that. Nate Jerry is not a first-round pick. He is not someone who is highly touted as this athletic freak that can play up in the box. That's physical. This dude can't tackle. It's as if watching, if you see Jeremiah Trotter and you see Brian Dawkins, and if you were to combine the two, I think you would have an Isaiah Simmons type of guy. But if you were combining I'm trying to think of some awful Eagle linebackers or defensive ends. But if you were to combine N.D. Kalu, remember him from 2003 and 2004? If you could combine and then let's see, DJ Moore or something like that, or some bum safety that we used to have, and you combine both, that would be what Jerry is. There's just nothing that he does that's good. There's nothing constructive that he does for this role.
Do you know what I think? The thing with Nate Gary, I think now we've got our cake, which is already on fire and burning. The thing with Nate Gary is that is very reactive and not proactive. So, like, if he sees a gap, before he's even thought of, should I shoot it? Is the ball there? What's my assignment? Am I in the run fit? Am I dropping into coverage? Like, what's happening? He's gone and just shot it and hoped for the best. Which sometimes, when that works, he looks like a great linebacker because he just made like a ridiculous play that no one else has the balls to, because he's jumped, as the snap's gone, he's gone into a hole, essentially, right? The bad news is that happens every single time. So if a team runs play action and Nate Gary comes storming down for no reason, then there's no one in coverage, you end up being ruined alive. This leads very nicely, though, onto a point I want to bring up before we get into some more questions, which is Nickel Roby-Coleman, who's a cornerback everyone was besotted with because he was a PFF darling, essentially. And I don't want to be negative, and I'm not being that guy. I watched a tape on him. It's fundamentally sound. I did a film room on it. It's sound. It's good tape. It's fine. But it's fine. Like, there's nothing special. Like, Darius Slay is special around the ball. Like, he's got an area of strength, right? Nickel Roby-Coleman, for me, didn't. And I was like, I don't really get what he brings over Strap at this point. I don't see visibly, in terms of, like, what he has asset-wise, he does that Strap couldn't develop into. He's given up 9 for 9 so far. 9 targets, 9 completions. He now faces Tyler Boyd, who is arguably among, I would say, the upper echelon of slot receivers in the game. Is Darius Slay going to move into the slot to take Tyler Boyd? Or because that's their perennial threat. Like, AJ Green's AJ Green, but that's like Alshon Jeffrey now to this offense. He's just there.
But then you leave Avonte Maddox and T. Higgins, who has a 6-inch, vertical. I mean, I'm sure that's the matchup right now anyway.
Yeah.
But if you move NRC out or whoever, everybody other than Darius Slay is like 5'9", 5'10", 5'8".
But that's why I don't get why they got rid of Rasul. Like, I really it was the perfect thing having him there for those matchups.
Change the scheme. Now we see Rasul doing good things in Carolina because he's fitting the scheme better. It's Schwartz is Schwartz, and I don't get it. And one thing in my mind that I struggle with is this and I hate Jim Schwartz. Everybody knows that. But is this a Jim Schwartz thing? Or is this a front office thing, trying to impose their will on what they think the defense should look like? Yeah. Because Jim Schwartz in Buffalo, his 1 year at Buffalo was like the #1 defense in the league, top 5. They had linebackers. They had a really good Nigel Bradham. They had a really good Preston Brown. Then you look at him in Detroit. They had DeAndre Levy. They had Stephen Tulloch. They had Darius Slay there. Then you even go back further to Tennessee. They had Stephen Tulloch again. They had Cortland Finnegan, really good for Cortland Finnegan. They had really good defensive players when he was there, and David Thornton and Keith Bullock.
Clayton Dawson.
You had so many good, really good positional players at linebacker, corner, and then now from 2016 to now, it's that philosophy is gone.
I disagree, and here's why. Because you mentioned all his stints in Buffalo and Tennessee and Detroit. What was the one constant of a Jim Schwartz defense? The one constant was a fearsome pass rush from the defensive line. The Lions had a good pass rush. The Titans with Albert Hainsworth and Van Dyke. These guys were great under Jim Schwartz. And we talk about it from that perspective of, first off, we can blame Jim Schwartz all we want to, but the fact of the matter is, 2 coaches spoke to the media this past week. One of them, when it was attacking the media, one of them took responsibility for the fact that they have not played well. You tell me which one deserves more of the credit for that, and I will take Jim Schwartz 100%. I would rather take Jim Schwartz over Doug Peterson with that type of mindset every single day of the week. And we can complain about the fact that the game plan hasn't been good and the defense has deteriorated over the last couple of years. How about we put the blame on the guys that need to be put the blame on? Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, and Derek Barnett have not produced as a top defensive line. And that is the bread and butter of a Jim Schwartz defense and always has been.
And we can also put the blame on there, if we're talking about the defensive line, that now we have a linebackers coach coaching defensive line. Like we have, we think that these people, but I feel like Howie is, I'm the smartest man in the room. Let's let Chris Wilson's contract expire, even though we just won a Super Bowl with his defensive line. Let's fire Philip Daniels, who whose defensive line wasn't too much worse than the line that Chris Wilson had. Yeah, I think they only had one less sack. They had 100 QB hits last year. And now let's promote Jim Schwartz's best friend in Matt Burke, who's only coached linebackers in his career. He's been defensive coordinator for a really bad Dolphins defense, but let's put him there. And now we're seeing this defensive line miss on stunts, not be able to beat single coverage, and it's this. And I know it's more on the players too, because you should, no matter who's your coach, you should know what the hell you're doing. Especially this stage in Fletcher Cox's career, Brandon Garrett's career, the veterans that you should know how to beat these guys up front. But it's like it's not happening right now, and it's a total. And I get
eclipse of the heart.
I get, like, I appreciate Jim Schwartz taking responsibility for it, because I don't like the guy, but seeing him do that was much better than Doug Peterson being like, oh yeah, that's a good question, that's definitely what Carson Wentz wants back, and this and that, instead of saying, this is my game plan, this is something that needs to be better. He just pretty much shoved Carson Wentz under the bus.
Just on that note, really quickly to jump in, guys, I mean, I think this kind of, we've been connecting a few dots. I feel like that scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with they're in the post office and they've got the mail board up with all the pins everywhere. I feel like we're in that right now. And I've been trying to work out all week, is there a clear disconnect between front office and coaching staff? And we've spoken about rookies, we've spoken about linebackers, and like why guys like Marcus Epps and Nate Gary are playing, why Davion Taylor isn't. Like why are two rookies getting snaps and that's it? I know there was a lovely article on PSN written about that earlier this week, but who wrote that? Hey, that little cheeky devil. What I do think though,
that was me. Like, you just pulled a me move. Like not even like shamelessly. You just like it's like, oh, here's my.
Oh no, it wasn't even my article. No, it was Brian's.
Oh. Then why are you bringing his shit?
I'm just proud, all right. Anyway, right. We're talking defensive line. We're talking disconnect. Can someone tell me where's Jannard Avery? I should have just done that.
That's not on. That's my point here. We keep saying, oh, it's Schwartz's problem. It's Wentz's problem. It's Doug Peterson not being able to talk to the media. Put the blame on where it's deserved. Howie Roseman has done nothing to better this roster over the last 2 seasons, and it has shown. His track record for drafting is horrendous. His track record for trades and free agent signings has been horrendous the last couple of years. We talk about, okay, well, Doug Peterson hasn't utilized the skill set needed for the roster, but as we've seen over the last 4 years, it usually takes Doug about 3 or 4 weeks to get his offensive game plan situated and ready. Even when they won the Super Bowl, that offense was not a Super Bowl winning offense in the first 3 weeks. It was okay, let's try this, let's try that, let's see what we're good at. It's a very wait-and-see type of game. Jim Schwartz, very similar. Middle of the season, their defenses are much better. End of the season, they're fantastic. And early on in the season, they have their struggles. How about we put the blame where it needs to be blamed and actually start questioning Howie Roseman's job as a general manager? Because over the last 2 years, it has been abysmal. And for the first time in the Doug Peterson era, he is struggling to make it work with the players that Howie provides.
Yeah, before we again explode into sheer balls of anger everywhere, we've done a very good job of not doing so far. I think we've all been very fair, but
can I just add something about Howie?
Sure.
Before you attempt to say that we're not exploding or anything, I feel like we saw Howie Roseman from 2010 to 2013 when Chip Kelly was hired, do a pretty good job with the Eagles roster and all that. I mean, I know we had some losing years, and 2013 was the final straw and all that, or 2012. And then 2013, 2014, 2015, we saw Chip gain a little more power and all that, and roster building, and they sent Howie to the corner. Do we think Howie's return to power in 2016 made him like, you know what, I'm gonna make sure I'm the smartest man in the room from now on, so that doesn't happen again? Like maybe he just built up this ego, like, I don't deserve to be in this. I'm going to make sure. And he's just pulling all the wrong punches right now in regards to roster building when he's trying to see, like, maybe he's looking at analytics the wrong way. Maybe he's looking at this, but he's just trying to, I feel like he just like opened a book of roster building for dummies, and he's trying to follow that word for word. rather than be a real like GM and leaning on personnel people.
That's an excellent point, and I do want to bring one thing up in terms of that, because I think what's also important is to bring up is the fact that the Eagles have lost a lot of front office personnel. They have lost, they've lost, just from coaching staff. You lose DiFilippo, you lose Frank Reich, and then all of a sudden you lose Andrew Barry, you lose Joe Douglas, and you lose a lot of the guys that were brought in 2016 when Doug Peterson was hired to basically help Howie Roseman say, okay, listen, you are a master of cap manipulation. That is his calling card, which is why I feel that if we get to the offseason and the Eagles make the playoffs, I think Howie Roseman's job is safe because he's the only guy that would be able to solve this cap mess and be like, don't worry, I got this. But player personnel has never been his strong suit. Looking at free agents has never been his strong suit. We remember what happened with Nnamdi Asomugha in 2011. Those were his guys. And again, in terms of a cap situation, he dealt with it beautifully where they didn't hold struggles and didn't have to pay any extra cash to that dream team. But that was never his skill set. His skill set was all about cap manipulation. And now, without Barry, without Douglas, he has to make these player personnel picks on his own, and he hasn't done a good job.
Can I just answer someone's question? So someone, well, it wasn't a question, it was a comment. Lucas Borgia says, nothing like questioning the guy that built 3 straight playoff rosters despite massive injuries. We got spoiled and now can't handle losing 2 games. It's embarrassing. But that's not Howie. The injuries happened to players that Howie brought in, and then Doug had to coach up the players that replaced him, and most of them were homegrown players or practice squad players. And it's mostly Doug in that aspect, in my opinion. We're not saying Doug built up playoff rosters that we knew were going to get injured. So Howie brought in these players because he knew they were going to get injured. Doug had to really coach them up, and then we had quarterbacks that coached them up and played with them to help them perform the way they performed. The last 4 games of the season last year wasn't Howie Roseman. That was Carson Wentz. 2017, 2018 wasn't Howie Roseman. It was Nick Foles and Doug Peterson catering to an offense that had Nick Foles underneath. So those 3 straight playoff appearances more of a Doug Peterson accomplishment than more than a Howie Roseman accomplishment, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time. We've got 5 minutes to go. I know you guys are all going to start running around and getting your jerseys on, getting your beers ready, your pizzas, your wings, whatever food. I might treat myself to a Donna pizza tonight, Chris. I don't know about yourself, but I think I might go and shake it up one more time. Before we get to my terrible pizza eating habits that are covered with garlic mayonnaise, though, gents, I need some predictions. Who do you think walks away with the win here? 2 winless teams. One of them's going to come away with a win, presumably, barring some bizarre circumstance. I'll come to you first, Chris. Who are you feeling? What's the score? Where are you going with it?
I said this on my podcast. I said this in my Know Your Enemy piece in my article. I think both defenses suck. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Joe Burrow is going to throw for like 400 today. I'm convinced. But I think Eagles pull it out. I think this is a 2-touchdown game from Wentz. I think this is a 2-touchdown game from Miles Sanders, and we'll get another touchdown somewhere in between, whether defensively, finally. It's this disconnected takeaways between 2017, where they had 31, and from 2018 to now that they have 38. It's crazy. So I think they need to figure out how to get at least a takeaway and a defensive touchdown. So I think this is a 42-35 game.
Ooh.
And the Eagles win.
Love that. All right, Nick, what about yourself? I know you were a little bit less optimistic than that. Where are you at?
I like to say that I am a pessimist when it comes to football, where I expect the worst case scenario and then I'm pleasantly surprised. So in 2017, I thought that the Eagles were going to go 0-16 and then 0-19 all the way to the Super Bowl. I didn't really expect the Eagles to win any game. Let's just put that out there. And that's going to continue today because I look at what the Bengals offer on offense. And with Zach Taylor's offensive system being similar to Sean McVay's that absolutely toasted the Eagles last week, there's a lot of problems there. I think they're going to run the ball far more than they did in the first 2 weeks. But I am very concerned about how Carson Wentz has played. I'm very concerned about how Doug Peterson has coached. And I think that continues for a third week. I think it's going to be like 27 to like 21 Bengals.
Okay, right. Well, I feel like we're on the X Factor now. And now some poor guy has had one vote from Simon Cowell. Yeah, one vote the other way. And they're going to start playing Westlife. And they're going to go, John, you've done very well. You've sung your heart out. But you're going to have to pat your bags because you're through to the next. And then they're going to, all the music kicks in. Everyone goes crazy. I think the Eagles win this game. So the guy does go through to the next round. He's going to the live shows. He's got the golden buzzer. And the reason the Eagles are going to win this game are because of Miles Sanders. It's that simple. Joe Mixon can only run to the right-hand side of the line for some reason. He's getting like 5.4 yards there. I think it's like 3.2 to the left. I know Chris is very good on like line splits with Miles Sanders. We all know where he has his success. I think Miles Sanders showed a lot last week to come in, made up for that early fumble, 95 rushing yards. I think it was 35 receiving. This is a bad Cincy defense, and there is no interior depth at defensive tackle. That's going to help Carson Wentz if there's no pressure. He doesn't have to be amazing. He has to be bang average. We're talking like Gardner Minshew level. We're talking even below that. Yeah, we're talking just go down as far as you want to go. Like, we're talking like Nick Mullins level, bang average. All right, just stick him in there. Check down Charlie's all game. Don't overcomplicate it. Get it done. Let Miles Sanders run the show. And if they do that, I think the Eagles can get a win. But guys, we've got 2 minutes until the game kicks off, so we're going to have to run around like headless chickens and make sure we've got all our setups ready to go, and I hope you guys do the same. We should be around for a post-game show. I don't know how soon after the game it will be. I've got to take up the post-game article, so it might be one of the boys bringing you that content, but do come back to the PSN channel. There will be some post-game stuff here. From myself, Liam Jenkins, from Chris Infante, from Nick Farrier, from us all at Philly Sports Network, we love you. Go Birds, and we'll see. Is that a British wave?
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Brilliant.